All right, everybody. It is the third Tuesday of the month. I can't believe I'm saying that. I feel like we did this like last week. But what that means is it's Tuesday Tech Talk, you guys. And today, our sixth installment, we're going to be talking about menu mapping basics. Really excited to get into this with you guys. I started menu mapping before I was an IT person, and it can be really confusing. So I just wanted to share some basic ideas and tenets with you guys. So if that's something that you find yourself having to do, it will be a little less intimidating. And as I mentioned, my name is Crystina Clauson. I am a coach here at CaterLinked, also the head of technology at CaterLinked and the Off-Premise Growth Academy. Outside of that sphere, I'm the CEO of Make Good Lemonade. So my day job is technical project management for restaurants. So I help restaurants when you guys are onboarding new technologies into your tech stack, when you're trying to do integrations, I help with that stuff. Or if you're having issues with your technology that you're using, sort of helping you find new technologies or find new ways to take advantage of the technology you have. So on this particular tile, I've put a lot of the softwares as a service that I am very familiar with. So if you see anything on here that catches your fancy, or you have something and you're having some issues, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on CaterLinked pretty much every day. And as a coach, it's my responsibility to make sure that you guys can be successful as catering professionals. So definitely feel free to reach out. All right, you guys ready to get into it? I know I am. So what the heck is menu mapping? So menu mapping is a process of connecting your point of sale menu items and settings to an external software. It's usually via entry of codes that are in your point of sale, and we'll kind of go through that. Sometimes this can be done programmatically, but as any good and honest POS professional will tell you, points of sale are never perfect. So even if you do some of this programmatically, you're going to have somebody go back through manually and sort of fix and clean up that information. So what are these external softwares that you're connecting to? It's going to be online ordering if they inject your orders directly into your point of sale, catering software if they do the same thing, inventory tracking, loyalty software, sometimes CRMs, gift cards, the list goes on and on. But anything that you use that ties into your point of sale, a lot of times things need to be mapped. And if you don't take anything else away than this in this webinar, it is, if something isn't mapped, it doesn't matter. If it's not mapped, if it's not mappable, it doesn't matter. That's the one thing that I want to drill into your guys' mind, because when you understand that if it's not mapped, it doesn't matter, it opens up a whole world of creativity to you in the way that you can map things into external systems, make things easier for your team to use, your team to execute, and also your customers to understand. So, who is this webinar for? This webinar is for anybody that is stuck onboarding a technology, especially if they're not a very technical person. So this usually goes to IT, but as we know, IT can get really busy. So a lot of times this falls on marketing or operations, and depending on the type of software, maybe finance or accounting. So each department may be responsible for a project that mapping happens, or doing that mapping in a project. Even if you're not the person who's handling the mapping for this software, it's really good for you to be familiar with this, because then you understand other aspects of a project and sort of how it affects you. So you may not be doing the mapping, you may need somebody to do it for you, but if you understand how it works, then it gives you a more holistic view of the things that are happening at your company and on projects that you're working for. So you may see, Christina, you talked about online ordering, you talked about catering, loyalty. My point of sale, freaking awesome. It does all of that stuff. I would say that's cool. That's totally cool. But I would recommend at least looking at external software, especially for catering. The thing is that these SaaS softwares, they are more specialized and are more focused on the specific needs of your team. Your point of sale company with all due respect, is mostly checking a box like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. But what I would do is if your point of sale handles all your catering orders, talk to your back of house staff. See how they execute those orders. Do they have, special tables on how to, increase their recipes so that their portion sizes and, everything that they're measuring out is correct? Is there a giant 3-ring binder that somebody's carrying around with all of the ways that your team has to manage around your software? So my argument is at least look at external catering software. It will probably help you make money, but more importantly, it'll help save you money. So, if you don't have somebody who's sitting with a calculator and calculating recipes for every single catering order that you have, you're saving time and labor. You've got that, streamlining your operations. Also, if you have people who are building those recipes, there is a chance that there could be a mistake made. So, one of the big things that we're facing right now is food waste. And if your team is able to have these recipes automatically change based on how many people there are, then there's less likelihood of them, misplacing a 0 and adding 10 times too much salt to something. So consider it, look at it, talk to your team, because I think that it can save you time and money, even if it's something that your POS checks the box, especially if you have an even partially complex catering menu. End of soapbox. By the way, too, I'm not affiliated with any catering software, so this is just me making a suggestion, not trying to get a commission. So, I have a little bit of a disclaimer, too. Each point of sale is different. When I speak in generalities in this webinar, I'm not talking about every single point of sale. I'm talking about the point of sales that I'm familiar with, the ones that you saw in one of those first tiles, and a couple other ones that I've worked with throughout the years. Not everything that I'm talking about may be applicable in your particular tech stack or your particular situation, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm speaking in generalities, just so we're trying to create some awareness. All right, and terminology, we go through this in all of our Tech Tuesday videos, and this is just an opportunity to make sure that everybody is sort of on the same page, that the words that I'm using, you guys can understand, because the way that working on the restaurant side, the words that we used in the restaurant concepts I worked at may be completely different than the ones that you guys are using. So this is a way for us to sort of level the playing field and not gatekeep via terminology. So combo groups and item and condiment are the two main ways that items are built in your point of sale. It's either built as a combo group with combo sides or an item and condiment or item and modifier. Mapping is the act of, as we spoke about, connecting something from your point of sale to an integrated software as a service. Menu codes are a little bit different than the menu ID numbers, and we'll get into that a little bit further, but it's a way to modify modifiers or modify recipes. And modifiers are something in the point of sale that allow you to change an item. So they're choices or changes to an item in your point of sale. Nesting is probably the most complicated thing we'll talk about today. And what I will say is that it is a modifier that modifies other modifiers. Don't worry, we'll get into it. And an open food modifier, open food prep, this is a very exhaustive list in your point of sale of all of the modifiers that can be added or removed to an item programmatically. And we'll talk more about that too. So on this slide, this terminology, all of these different names are different names that different POS companies use to describe an ID number associated with a menu item. So you may have a cheese pizza and its menu item is 123, but they could say that its barcode is 123, or it's GUID, or it's PLU, or SKU, or SLU. So this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just what I've encountered in the points of sales that I've worked in. It's a good idea to familiarize yourself with whatever term your IT team or your point of sale uses to make sure that you're on the same page when you're talking with your IT team about making changes. It makes it a lot easier if you can speak some of their language. And I'm pretty sure they'll be happy to tell you which one they use. And if you come up with any funny ones that you hear, let me know. So first and foremost, your menu, whether it's on your printed menu, in your point of sale, online ordering, catering, on your catering, trifold pamphlet, you follow a structure, right? It is menu categories, menu items, and then item modifiers. That's how all menus are structured, unless it's a very, very simplistic menu. I guess generally this is how menus work. So you guys are familiar with categories, right? It's the appetizers, it's the entrees, desserts, kids meals, that kind of thing. Inside each one of those categories are different choices. So mozzarella sticks for appetizers, burgers, steaks, pasta are those items, right? On each one of those items are modifiers, or on most of those items are modifiers. So if you're serving a steak in your restaurant, you need to know the meat temperature before it can go out that door, right? If you have a burger entree, you need to know what sides people want. So those are modifiers on your items. When they're part of a combo group, they could be combo sides. They also can be referred to as condiments, even as a blanket term. I think they use that a lot in Aloha, if I remember correctly. So I apologize. This might be a little difficult to see. So I would familiarize yourself, if you can, with your point of sale. If you're not in IT, ask your IT team for view only access to your menu. If you ask for view only, they know that you're not going to go in and start messing stuff up. So I would recommend just trying to familiarize yourself. So this is a screenshot of an item in a point of sale. If you look at the very top, it has a number right here. Can you see that? Yeah. A number and then the name. Unfortunately, in the screenshot, they named it food, but that would be, cowboy burger or chicken sandwich, something like that. So that would be the name of the food. So those are the things that you should familiarize yourself with in your point of sale. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look, actually, this might be symphony. Anyway, if you look over on the left-hand side, you'll see capitalized words with asterisks around them, or stars. Those are menu categories. The way that menu categories are used in your point of sale is that your IT team, whoever built or rebuilt your point of sale, they chose blocks of numbers for each particular section of their menu. They did that so when your culinary team creates a new item, your IT team knows where to put that in the POS to make it easier for them to structure the point of sale, but also for the people after them to come in. This is a fairly common structure when building points of sale. So you'll notice 100 is open items, 1,000 is food items, 2,000 items is food with requirements, 3,000 is beverages. So the team knows where to build this stuff. The cool thing is, when you familiarize yourself with the menu and you're trying to find something in the menu, which if you have to do mapping, inevitably you will, you'll know what category you should go look at in order to find something. So, and again, you can ask your IT team for, a tour, and I'm sure that they would be happy to nerd out about their menu with you. So, what is mapped? What things are mapped? The ID number, or that number, the 1001 that I showed you in that last slide, those are the numbers. Modifiers are mapped, and they usually have their own ID number. Sometimes a combo group number will be mapped. More people use an item and condiment situation in their point of sale than combo groups. You guys probably won't run across it very often. It's a little more complex to map a combo group, but combo groups actually work really well with external SaaS, just because the requirements are more stringent. It's really cool. If you want to nerd out about it, please let me know. Probably don't want to hear about it right now, though. So what I wanted to do, too, to illustrate sort of categories, items, and modifiers, is I want to show you guys how that looks in the restaurant terminal, because you guys are probably familiar with restaurant terminals. So I built some things just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. So, for example, usually when you go into your terminal, the first thing that you're going to see when you choose food is categories. So these are the different categories. These categories are created to make it easier for your staff to find things, right? You want them to get in, find what they need, get out as quickly as possible. So, and that starts with categories, right? So the interesting thing is, in most cases. I think in some newer point of sales, this may not be quite right, but categories aren't mapped. Those buttons that you saw on that last screen, in a lot of point of sales, these aren't even mapped to anything. They're just a button that they name to get into, a sub menu, basically. So they're not mapped to those numbers in your point of sale. They're just buttons. There are very few things that categories are mapped for, unless you have a menu, unless you are doing online ordering through your point of sale. Those will sometimes be mapped. But category numbers, names don't matter. They don't matter. They are not mapped. So categories for online ordering and catering don't matter. So in your point of sale, you probably have like a catering packages section. You have a catering bulk food section, catering beverage section. When you build that in online ordering or in a catering system, you don't have to use catering. You can use packages. You could even drill down even further. Like I had a client who did catering packages for 10 to 25 people, catering packages for 26 to 50 people. So that it would make it easier for guests to figure out, where they should be looking based on the size of their event. So you can change that. Cool thing is maybe you've got 2 soups and 3 salads on your menu. You could combine those into a soup and salad category to make it easier for your guests. Your guest experience should be mindfully different than your server's experience in your terminals. So when we choose a category, let's say we chose burgers, these would be all of the burgers that somebody would choose from in your point of sale. By the way, I tried to make these colors as garish as they are in a point of sale, but Canva wouldn't let me. So we're just going to go with like slightly garish colors. But so like looking at these items, by the way, you maybe don't want the same names that you're seeing in your point of sale terminal to show up on your online menu. So you may have maybe CHIX or CHIXBRG, or it could be Mother Clucker in your point of sale, real story. So you don't have to name it the same thing that shows up in your terminal. In fact, you probably don't want to. You probably want it to be more descriptive and more general. If you've got Fred's Burger, well, what the hell is that? So it could be a cowboy burger. But since these names aren't mapped, you can make them whatever you want in your online ordering and your catering menus. So, and again, generally the only thing that's mapped is the item ID number, or GUID or SLU or SKU or PLU, not the name. And again, if it's not mapped or mappable, it doesn't matter. So let's look at a little bit at modifiers. So we chose a burger, and with a burger, we have to choose a side. So we're choosing a garden salad. That garden salad is a modifier or a condiment or a combo side. In Micros 37, it'd be like probably combo main side, but again, it's a modifier. So when you order a garden salad, right, what's the next question? What dressing? What dressing do you want? So that dressing is a nested modifier. It is a modifier on a modifier. It's taking a side choice and making a change to it. So for example, you may have different types of apples. You could have fresh apples and applesauce. So you may need a nested modifier for apples. For mashed potatoes, you could have sour cream, butter, and gravy as a nested modifier. So there are a lot of different ways that you may need to modify a side on your menu or modify a modifier. And these are those cases. So on a catering menu, for example, it could be that you include chicken wings in a package. So, and you need to choose boneless or bone-in wings. But then we want to know, do you want carrots? Do you want celery? Do you want blue cheese? Do you want ranch? So that modifier with the vegetables and the sauces is a nested modifier. So, and this isn't exactly accurate, but this is the way that a way that I figured we could think about this, is that there generally are like 4 types of modifiers that you'll encounter in a point of sale generally. The first one is a required modifier. Now these are things that you need to get this food out the door. If I'm making you a steak, I need to know what temperature it is. if we have a chicken entree, but there are 3 preparations, so like Tuscan chicken or barbecue chicken or blackened chicken, I need to know what you need so I can get that out the door. If it comes with 2 sides, I need to know, do you want broccoli and mashed potatoes, or do you want rice pilaf and green beans? So those are required modifiers to get it out the door. Meat temperature, bun options, sort of those things that satisfy your order. And it's really important to get that right when you've got a catering order or an online order, because when it gets out the door, when it leaves the kitchen, it leaves your building. So you really want to make sure that you get that right, because you don't have as much of a chance of getting that right again with that customer because it's gone. So required modifiers are important. Optional modifiers are kind of nice to have, but I would think of those as like adding silverware napkins, or, no mushrooms or no onions, stuff like that. So it's not wholly necessary to get the food out the door, but there are things that are nice to have. So the one thing too, programmatically, is required modifiers. The way that your POS has been built, the order won't sometimes go through into your kitchen. It'll throw an error if you don't satisfy all of your required modifiers. But optional modifiers are like, yeah, whatever. We can take them or leave them. But part of optional modifiers is something called modifier codes. When I was on the restaurant side, we called them menu levels, not menu codes, but they call them menu codes or modifier codes or levels. But essentially what they are is programmatically no something, extra something, sub something. And the reason why you want to consider using this rather than like an open food prep of like no mushrooms is because this can be used for inventory purposes. So let's say I order spaghetti and meatballs, but I don't want meatballs. And I can do a no meatballs programmatically in my online ordering and through my point of sale, is it will remove those meatballs from my meal and re-add them to inventory. We all know that restaurants is a game of pennies. So it's really important to consider using this if it will help you keep your inventory updated. But these, again, modifier codes, menu codes, or menu levels. Okay, and open food prep. I hope most of you guys are familiar with open food prep. Open food prep is usually, unless you have alcohol, it's the lion's share of your menu. And this is generally a huge part of your menu. Usually it's towards the bottom, like the last part of your menu, because they don't know how much they're going to add. So it's a big part, but it's going to be everything that you can do to a menu item. So it's going to be like no ice, or add tomatoes, or no LT set, or, like in this example, cheese. Part of your food prep that you should be careful of is some of it you can charge extra and some of it you don't. And generally what I've seen across the board in point of sale is if there's an upcharge for an item in your open food prep, there's a $sign in front of it. If there's no charge associated with it, there's no $sign in front of it. Things to know here is it's a really good idea to get yourself in there and understand what your open food prep is available. Because let's say that you're doing a catering event and you really want them to be able to add tablecloths, for example. So you're like, I want to sell, 10 tablecloths at $10. And you tell your IT team like, hey, I want this thing. But if you look in your food prep, maybe there's an add tablecloths button for $10 a piece. So you can just say, hey, can you make this available here, blah, 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 and give them that item number. I can guarantee you that it'll most likely be done quickly and it will be done correctly if you can provide the IT team with the information that you need. And if you know whatever code or ID number type they're using, so if you're like, can you add GUID number 567 to this store's point of sale under this category, I can guarantee you it's going to get done a lot quicker than saying, hey, can you add tablecloths? So, this is a good way too for you to bridge some gaps with your IT team. So one last thing about nesting modifiers, the way that I want you guys to think about this is Russian dolls, because it's the only thing that really matches the nesting piece of it. So each level is a different modifier group. So, you've got your side salad as the first one, and then maybe your second one is salad dressing, and then maybe your third one is different vegetables that you can add, and the fourth one is adding cheese and bacon bits. So those are, the nesting modifiers and the different levels. When we talk next month, when we get into more advanced menu mapping, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So a couple of things. Number one, your point of sale is not what it seems. If you're responsible for mapping something, you're going to find that. When you're building a new catering software, you'll find items that you sell all the time with catering that do not exist in your point of sale. Somebody is using like an open dollar amount item and getting it added. For catering, it's usually one-off items. We had to build like hot dog buns once. On the online ordering part of it, interestingly, it's usually issues with print routing, which is weird, but it's usually identifying problems that already exist. Nobody had the time or energy to tell you about it. So be mindful of that when you start these projects, because you will run into it. Number two, you're probably going to be looking at your lab or at your most popular location when you start doing this mapping. One thing to note is that your locations might not match. Your corporate locations might have different ID numbers at different stores, but nobody notices, right? Because everybody's using similar names. Also, a franchise could have the same names, but completely separate numbers, even if they're using your enterprise POS database. It's just something that happens, but if you are responsible for mapping all of these locations or these franchise locations, understand that it's going to be a lot more work if people are using different ID numbers at different stores. Also, if you have too much variance in your ID numbers, like if 75 or 80% don't match, you may be responsible for purchasing different instances so that you have different menus on wholly different builds inside of those online ordering or catering platforms. So understand that, and when you have those conversations with your franchisees, you may want to level set with them and let them know, hey, there could be additional costs if you guys aren't using our all of our IDs. Also, work with IT to remedy these. Work with, I probably should have capitalized and bolded with. So work with IT on these things. I can guarantee you if you send IT something and say, hey, these two things are wrong, and then they send you a message back and say, hey, I got them fixed. And you're like, oh, I've got these other two things. Oh, but by the way, that third thing, that doesn't work yet either. What I would do is recommend setting a process with them, whether it's a shared Google Sheets or it's a spreadsheet that, once they finish it, you give them a new spreadsheet with new information. Just come up with a process with them in order to make you both successful. Because I guarantee if you send them an email with a couple of things and then you send them a different email with a couple of things on the same thread, neither one of you will be successful. Everybody will be really frustrated. Maybe there's separate tickets into your ticketing system, but talk through it with them, figure out what works to make them successful. Also, like if you guys are on, at work, maybe consider them bringing them like a Red Bull or a Monster. It's just what keeps tech people up all day. So, maybe do some things to make sure that they feel appreciated and understood, because they're going to do a lot of work for you. So just make sure that they're happy. And again, if there's one thing that you guys remember, if it's not mappable or mapped, it doesn't matter. And I'm excited. Next month, we'll go through what that means in more detail. So now you guys understand what the box looks like. So next month, we can look outside of the box. And this webinar will be up on CaterLinked as a course in the future. I'll keep you guys updated for that. If you need any help with mapping your menus, please feel free to reach out. And thank you for your time today, guys. What kind of questions do you have? Ooh. Who do we want? Oh, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Who do we want to set up our menu maps? Ideally, you want your IT team to set up menu maps, or maybe the company that you're working with, the SaaS company, can have somebody go through and do the mapping for you. The only problem with having that company do the mapping for you is that they don't know your point of sale. I had a POS guy once tell me that having somebody look in your point of sale is like looking in your underwear drawer. It can be a little embarrassing for them because no point of sale is perfect. Everybody's out here making lemonade. But yeah, that was a good one. How often should we be adjusting mapping on the back end? It depends. There's some menus that people don't change very often, but if you guys do like a seasonal menu refresh every 3 months, I would definitely check that. Or if you're experiencing issues, so if you notice that you have orders failing, or if they're not injecting into the point of sale, you may want to check them then. I would say probably quarterly. There's some reports that you can run in some online ordering and catering systems that help you understand when your mapping might be funky. But I would say quarterly, probably at the very least. What should I do if my menu has lots of nesting modifiers? Do I map them all, or is there a better approach? That's a great question. And something we'll go over in a little more detail next week. But what I would recommend doing when you first start with your menu is add nesting modifiers to remove allergens. So like, removing onions, removing tomatoes and eggs, like in a salad. Removing things that are an allergen, and then only letting people add things if there's a fee associated with it. So if you say that you can add pickles, you can add tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, I guarantee you your kitchen will come to a screeching halt. So what I would recommend doing is remove allergens, because it gives people an idea of what allergens are in there. If your descriptions aren't very good, but your descriptions should be better. And add things where there's a cost associated with it. So it is to your benefit to allow people to add extra cheese if there's an upcharge, or extra bacon. So I would start there. And then what I would do is slowly update that. Get feedback from your restaurant teams. And if your online ordering or your catering has special instructions or notes section, run reports with that every month or so and see if you have a lot of items that people are asking for a lot, and see if you can add those as a nested modifier. You may not be able to. Like when I was on the brand side, the whole time I was there, people asked for flats and drumettes when we did wings, but they come together in a package. So it wasn't something we could accommodate, but definitely check it often. Have those conversations with your operations team and see if that's something that they can accommodate. And definitely do it if you can add an upcharge to it, because then it's more worth your time and your team's time to do it. What's the best approach for mapping packages to POS menu items? Should I treat those as combo items in the POS? If you have the ability to do combos in your point of sale, I wouldn't recommend changing your whole POS, like if you're using item and condiment right now. But if your team is familiar with combo meals, I think that it's a good approach. The reason why is because with condiments, like the item condiment mapping, there are less checks and balances. So sometimes the required items may not be strictly required in the point of sale, but a combo meal will completely error out if you don't add those requirements. I would say if your team isn't familiar with it, it's a lot more complex to build in your point of sale. So I wouldn't worry about it if you're not already using it. I've been told to keep things simple and not map everything on my POS. What are your thoughts on this? I think that that's absolutely true. When I was at Famous Dave's, there's something called an All-American Feast. And we allowed for modifications on everything. So it was like 3 different meats, 3 different sides. And the kitchen shits would be like 1.5 feet long, which is triggering for anybody who's watched Bear, I've heard. But yeah, I would keep it simple. Only don't allow any modifications necessary. Like if it's going to just make your kitchen go to a screeching halt. Talk to your teams in your restaurant. If you have that stuff, maybe back some of it off. But I would say, start simple and get more complex as is necessary with what your customers want. But also, if it helps alleviate some pressure on your kitchen, definitely try and make those. What's the best approach to testing POS mapping to ensure all possible combinations of menu items and modifiers are mapped correctly? In my experience, it's actually testing with a restaurant. So what I always did before we would turn on catering or an online menu on for a store is we would contact the store and say, hey, you guys are, we're starting catering. How cool is that? Always with a positive attitude because that informs how they think about it. And then schedule a time with them. Talk with them about a time that you can test to the restaurant before the store opens, generally an hour or two before the store opens on a not busy day during a not holiday season. And if you hit opening and you haven't finished testing, test in another day. Do not start injecting test chits. And you can hear like the person at the fryer station or the person on the flat top who are like, hey, what the heck is going on? So test early. And what I usually do is kick up some pre-orders and your items may share modifier groups. So test each of those items in a modifier group, test all of the items on the menu, inject them, and make the person in the restaurant read it back to you. What we would do sometimes too to test like special instructions is write something weird in there, because if they don't laugh or if they don't say it back to us, we know they're not paying attention. So a lot of times it was adding sprinkles to mashed potatoes or something like that in like the special instructions, just so you know that they're reading them. A couple cool things about doing this with a restaurant though, that's kind of neat, is that they can see that these online ordering and catering orders aren't any different than anything else that's coming into their restaurant, right? Like, oh, we see this every day. It's no different. Because sometimes like change is hard in a restaurant, especially if your ops isn't accustomed to being part of the discussion ahead of time. This is just stuff that happens to them that they have to deal with. But if you're like, hey, we're doing this thing, let's test it out. And they're like, oh, it's not that bad. But also gives them the opportunity to ask you questions about it. Like, hey, what happens with this? What happens with this? So it helps alleviate some of the pressure and anxiety that they're feeling about this new thing because they see it in action and because they can actually ask questions about it. So my recommendation, always test with a restaurant. There are ways you can test at your lab first before you test with a restaurant. Also, there are ways that you can see, like if stuff isn't mapped correctly, like if you have OLO, it works for catering as well as online ordering. There's mismatch reports that you can run. So there are a lot of things that you can do before a restaurant, but I would always recommend test with a restaurant because you could have fat fingered something, right? Like you could have meant broccoli, but put in brisket or something like that. So definitely test with the restaurants. When's the course coming out? That's a great question. We're still working on some stuff in the back end that Terry and Gabe would probably poo-poo if I said, but there'll be announcements on some things soon. But this is probably going to be a couple months before it comes out. But again, I'll make sure you guys know. If it's not mappable, does it still matter? No. If it's not mappable and if it's not mapped, it does not matter. Awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you guys so much for your time today. It's been awesome. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.